Hey YouTubers, interesting. Took the Blazer on a little bit longer trip last night. Went down to Butler, Missouri and back just to see how it would do on a little bit longer drive. No complaints. I mean, it ran good. I would say just rudimentarily trying to calculate gas mileage, and that's driving between 70 and 75 miles an hour. It was getting at least 22. I'd say that'd be a fair estimate without filling it back up and, finding out for sure. I'd say it was pulling a good 22 miles per gallon on the highway in fifth gear, which is exactly what I was hoping, even maybe a little more. I was hoping to get 25 or better out of it on the highway, but 22 is a good 10 miles a gallon better than it ever did with the old small block on the stupid highway. So anyway, here's the problem I'm having. I noticed that when I hit any kind of bump at all, it can be just literally just a deviation in the asphalt, or like a rut, or just anything from a big truck. Specifically, like when I'm backing or pulling in or out of my driveway, it literally acts like it's bottoming out the rear suspension. And it sounds, to me, the only thing I could think of that would sound similar is that I thought either my leaf spring was broken or I had a shock that was fixing to fall off the vehicle, because it's a really distinct, just a dead thud, almost like a metal on metal clang whenever I hit these bumps in the road, or if I pull in and out of the driveway, or God forbid I hit a manhole cover or something. So I was under here trying to use the torque wrench, and I've got the torque wrench set on 95, and I checked all four of my U-bolts, or bolts. There are two U-bolts with 4 nuts. I checked all those to make sure they weren't somehow loosening up. They're way beyond 95 foot-pounds, because I went ahead and clicked them all at 95, and then I went ahead and went back through them and just kind of checked them to see if I could move them a little at all. And yeah, whatever we torqued those at with the impact, it's more than I can probably do with my bare arm just pulling it underneath this car. So probably going to be using an impact to kick them back off in the future. But I didn't know if you guys could see right above here, I made solid steel, what would you call that, like pinion angle wedges. I was basically putting this rear end in with these 3-inch lowering springs, which are absolutely suck. Like this brand, I bought these lowering springs off of eBay, and they were, I want to say, like a Western brand or something to that effect. They're absolutely horrible. And what I mean by horrible is, a leaf spring is supposed to have an arch. Like when you install a leaf spring on a vehicle, it would normally have an arch that gives the spring the ability to support the rear weight of the vehicle and function properly for, traction or whatever you want to call it. But after these 3-inch lowering leaves like settled in, there's literally no arch. Like, I don't know if you guys can pick it up in the video, but it's got like this spring pack, but it's literally just flat from the front spring eye to the hanger in the back. It's just flat. It has no spring tension to even attempt to hold up the weight of a Blazer in the back. I love the ride height, because it did lower the vehicle, but now the rear suspension is literally worthless. Like, it's as soon as you take off, it literally will squat like a coil spring car. And you guys feel free to look this up on, in the chassis tuner's guide, and call all the chassis builders and all that stuff. A leaf spring vehicle is never supposed to squat in the back. Like, the way a leaf spring works is it holds the however much distance you have from the top of your tire to the body of the car, those will never come together. A properly set up leaf spring suspension will just maintain that distance, and then when you're under acceleration trying to race or anything like that, it'll literally separate, it'll lift and separate the body away from the tire as the spring and the suspension plants the tires. So anytime you see somebody with a leaf spring suspension, if it's squatting down on the launch like a coil spring car, that is absolutely killing performance. It's killing the springs, it's killing their U-joints, and how they're not snapping a drive shaft or a U-joint is beyond me, because when you let this suspension squat like that, the front of your pinion is literally almost sticking towards the floorboard. Because when you let these springs bend and distort like that, it literally can raise the pinion up so far that it's sitting up at an angle like that. See if you can see that. But it'll go from being here to going up. And read that, check that out on any of your chassis. You've got ways, Competition Engineering, all these people that sell how to set up your chassis and how to hook a car. And a leaf spring suspension is way different than a coil spring. So you guys feel free to look that up. But mine suck because they're not strong enough to properly support the back of this vehicle. So the fix I'm going to try to do is I'm going to replace these shocks with some just factory. I believe I'm going to be able to do it with Malibu shocks, but like a G-body, metric G-body car, I'm hoping it'll work. Because what I think has happened here on mine is that I've got this thing lowered so far in the back that I have literally exploded the inside of these shocks. Because these are factory height S10 Blazer. I'm pretty sure that it's literally compressing this all the way down to about here, because I can see where it's rubbed the paint all the way down. You can see where it's going almost all the way down to there. It's literally just exploded or blown the inside of this shock, because there's literally no resistance inside of it at all. All the mounting hardware is tight, top and bottom. My rear end itself is properly secured and torqued in. So when it makes that noise, all I could think of was maybe I broke a spring eye, or the rear end could have been loose, probably, front spring eye, because I broke leaf springs on my 71 Ventura drag racing, and it sounded kind of similar. It had that weird popping, loud noise, felt like the rear end was going to fall out. But as best as I can tell, the leaf springs are still intact. They're not broken, but they're not strong enough, and I think I've exploded those stupid shocks. So I need to get a shock that's designed for the new lowered position. I have entertained the idea of trying to run those G-body metric shocks, because they have the same upper and lower mount designs as these, but they're a small enough diameter on the shock body that I have just a set of, I don't want to call them coilovers, but it's like a helper spring system that you can bolt to your shocks before you install them in the car, and it adds spring pressure to help hold the rear end up. I was hoping that I could install those helper springs with a brand new set of shocks that are made for the new lowered position and reduced suspension travel, and put on those Caltrac bars that Richard and I built more than a year ago, I think, because he just recently put his Caltrac bars, his homemade, we'll call them fake bars, on his Typhoon, and he loves them. He said not only did it stop and control that squat, but that he can launch it now and it doesn't wheel hop or try to do any bunny hopping or nothing weird like that. So I think if I put those Caltrac style bars on here, get new proper length shocks with the helper coils, I might get lucky and make this rear suspension stable and make it work. So I'm hoping anyway. Got my fingers crossed. I'm laying on the ground talking, so I might sound a little weird, but I didn't want to drive this thing anymore because I had plans on kind of cruising it today because of the Saturday and it was nice weather. But man, that noise it was making last night when we were pulling in the driveway, I was just like, what in the world could that be? I don't understand. I don't want to drive it down the road and the freaking rear end fall out on the ground or something, but you know, the mounting bolts that are in there are fine. Those metal pinion wedges that I made, I started to say this a while ago and got sidetracked. It literally was, I was able to set my pinion at a -6 degrees with these metal shims that I got from I think they use them somehow. It has something to do with those big steel plates that they cover holes in the street with when they're doing road work or working on your streets. They put those really thick metal plates on there, and somehow these metal wedges have something to do with it. I don't know. So basically I bought them like both for $10 or something, and they're real long. They're like, I don't know, at least a foot long. It's just a gradual incline, like a solid steel wedge. So basically what I did was just kept messing with that foot long wedge that starts out at, you know, 1/8 of an inch and then just keeps getting bigger, and I just kept putting it in there until I got the right pinion angle, marked it, took it into the shop, cut it to length, then drilled my locator hole, added a nipple, like a metal nipple that sticks up through the bracket in your rear end as a locator pin. All those are is the ends off. I ground down the ends on some caliper bolts. So here I have of this, you know, what I felt was like it was a high strength caliper bolt, and it was close to the right size that I could literally press it into this stupid wedge, and made my own homemade pinion angle wedges. So, and they're made of solid steel, so you never have to worry about them like falling apart or breaking or cracking or anything goofy like that. So anyway, this is my shade tree S10 from underneath. She looks a little rough, I know, because she gets a little rusty. And that stupid, I did not put that chrome cover on there. That's been on there ever since I traded for this vehicle years and years ago. And even my expensive stainless steel MagnaFlow mufflers, they got a little surface rust on them. So, you know, stainless steel is only good stainless steel if you buy the really expensive stainless steel, apparently. So whatever they use isn't 100%. It's got a little iron or some kind of impurities in it, but they're nowhere near rotting out or doing anything dumb like that. So anyway, I just want to make a real short video, kind of experimenting with what's going on with my stupid rear suspension, and kind of give some ideas of what I was going to do to fix it. Thank you guys.